The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Colonel Sarah Mitchell stepped out of her civilian car. She had driven 3 hours through winding mountain roads to reach this remote training facility, her stomach tight with nervous excitement. Today marked the beginning of her new assignment as the base commander, a position she had worked 22 years to achieve. Sarah straightened her civilian blazer and picked up her briefcase from the passenger seat. She had chosen to dress professionally, but casually for her first day, wanting to meet her new team without the intimidating barrier of a full military uniform. Her plan was simple: arrive quietly, observe the daily operations, and introduce herself to the staff before making any significant changes. The base entrance loomed ahead, flanked by 2 young guards who couldn't have been older than 25. Their uniforms were crisp, their postures rigid, and their expressions serious as they monitored everyone approaching the gate. Sarah noticed how they snapped to attention when military vehicles passed through, their respect for authority evident in every movement. As she approached the checkpoint, Sarah reached into her briefcase for her identification documents. The morning air was cool, and she could hear the distant sounds of training exercises echoing across the compound. Soldiers were running in formation, their synchronized footsteps creating a rhythmic drumbeat that had become the soundtrack of her life. "Good morning," Sarah said warmly to the first guard, a tall young man with earnest brown eyes and perfectly polished boots. "I'm here for my first day as the new base commander." The guard looked at her with barely concealed confusion, his eyes scanning her civilian clothing and modest appearance. Sarah was a woman of average height, with graying hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her outfit consisted of a navy blue blazer, khaki pants, and comfortable walking shoes. To the untrained eye, she looked more like a visiting consultant than a military leader. "Ma'am," the guard said slowly, his voice carrying a tone of polite but firm disagreement, "I think there might be some confusion here. This is a restricted military facility. Civilians aren't permitted beyond this point without proper escorts and advance clearance." Sarah smiled patiently and reached for her military identification card. "I understand the security protocols, soldier. Here's my ID. As I mentioned, I'm Colonel Sarah Mitchell, your new commanding officer." The second guard, a stocky young woman with short blonde hair, moved closer to examine the identification. She took the card and studied it carefully, comparing the photo to the woman standing before them. After a long moment, she handed it back with a skeptical expression. "Ma'am, this appears to be legitimate identification, but we weren't informed of any new commanding officer arriving today. Additionally, our current commander, Colonel Reynolds, hasn't mentioned anything about a transition. I'm going to need to verify this with the main office before I can allow you to proceed." Sarah's patience was beginning to wear thin, but she maintained her professional composure. She had encountered similar situations before, particularly early in her career, when female officers were less common. The assumption that she couldn't possibly be in a position of authority was frustrating but not entirely unexpected. "I appreciate your thoroughness in following security procedures," Sarah replied, her voice remaining calm despite her growing irritation. "However, I assure you that my credentials are in order. Colonel Reynolds was reassigned last week, and I'm here to assume command immediately. Perhaps you could contact Captain Williams in personnel? He should have received notification of my arrival." 2. The first guard shook his head firmly. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we have strict orders not to admit anyone claiming to be in command positions without proper verification through our chain of command. There have been instances of people attempting to gain unauthorized access by impersonating officers. We simply cannot take that risk." Sarah felt her frustration building as precious minutes of her first day ticked away. She had important meetings scheduled, reports to review, and personnel to meet. Standing at the gate arguing with guards half her age was not how she had envisioned beginning her tenure as base commander. "Listen," she said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "I understand you're doing your job, but I am Colonel Sarah Mitchell, United States Army. I have served this country for over 2 decades, and I will not be kept from my assigned duties by bureaucratic confusion. Now, I suggest you contact your superior officer immediately and resolve this situation." The female guard crossed her arms defensively. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you cannot enter this facility. Our orders are clear, and we will not compromise base security for anyone, regardless of their claims. If you are indeed who you say you are, then proper channels will confirm that, and you'll be admitted accordingly. The standoff continued as other vehicles began to line up behind Sarah's car. Military personnel heading to work started honking their horns. Clearly frustrated by the delay, some rolled down their windows to see what was causing the holdup, creating an embarrassing spectacle that made Sarah's situation even more uncomfortable. Sarah realized that this confrontation was rapidly becoming a public scene, which was the last thing she wanted on her first day. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that these guards were simply following their training and protocols. Their dedication to security, while inconvenient in this moment, was actually a positive sign of the base's operational standards. "Very well," Sarah said finally, stepping back from the checkpoint. "I'll wait here while you contact the appropriate personnel to verify my identity and authorization. But I want this resolved quickly and efficiently." As the guards retreated to their booth to make the necessary calls, Sarah stood beside her car, watching the daily rhythm of military life continue around her while she remained locked outside the very base she had come to command. 20 minutes passed as Sarah waited beside her car, watching the guards make phone call after phone call. She could see them gesturing animatedly through the window of their security booth, clearly struggling to reach someone who could resolve the situation. The line of vehicles behind her had grown longer, and several frustrated drivers had gotten out to voice their complaints about the delay. The young male guard emerged from the booth, his face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. He approached Sarah hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with what he had to report. "Ma'am," he began nervously, "I've contacted several departments, but there seems to be some kind of communication breakdown. Personnel says they don't have any record of a new commander arriving today. The duty officer is in a meeting and can't be reached, and Captain Williams, who you mentioned, is apparently on emergency leave as of yesterday." Sarah felt her heart sink. She had specifically confirmed these arrangements with headquarters just days ago. Someone had clearly failed to update the proper channels, leaving her in an impossible situation. The irony wasn't lost on her that her first challenge as base commander was actually getting onto the base to begin her duties. "What about your communications with headquarters?" Sarah asked, trying to maintain her patience. "Surely someone there can confirm my assignment." The female guard joined the conversation, looking equally frustrated. "Ma'am, we've tried, but the communication systems are experiencing technical difficulties this morning. We can receive calls, but outgoing lines keep failing. It's like everything that could go wrong is going wrong at exactly the same time." As if summoned by her words, a military transport truck approached the gate from the inside of the base. The guards immediately straightened and prepared to wave it through. But the truck slowed to a stop instead. The driver, a seasoned sergeant with weathered features and keen eyes, rolled down his window and called out, "What's the holdup here? I've got supplies that need to get to the airfield, and this traffic jam is making me late." The male guard approached the truck window. "Sergeant Martinez, we have a civilian claiming to be our new base commander, but we can't verify her credentials. She's been waiting here for almost half an hour." Sergeant Martinez looked past the guard towards Sarah, studying her carefully. His expression shifted from annoyance to curiosity as he took in her professional appearance and confident posture. Something about her demeanor seemed familiar, though he couldn't immediately place where he might have encountered her before. "Did you say she claims to be the new commander?" Martinez asked, his voice taking on a different tone. "What's her name?" "She says she's Colonel Sarah Mitchell," the female guard replied. The sergeant's eyes widened in recognition, and he immediately put his truck in park and jumped out. He approached Sarah with quick, purposeful strides, his expression a mixture of surprise and growing realization. "Colonel Mitchell?" he asked, stopping a respectful distance from her. "Ma'am, could you tell me about the incident at Fort Campbell involving the missing supply convoy 3 years ago?" Sarah looked at him carefully, searching her memory. The specificity of his question suggested he had personal knowledge of that event. After a moment, recognition dawned on her face. "You're talking about Operation Recovery?" she said confidently. "A convoy carrying medical supplies went missing during a severe storm. I organized a search and rescue mission that lasted 36 hours. We found the convoy trapped in a mudslide with one injured driver. You were part of the extraction team that helped pull the vehicles out. Sergeant Martinez's face broke into a wide grin, and he immediately snapped to attention and saluted. "Colonel Mitchell, ma'am!" "Sergeant Rodriguez Martinez, I served under you during the recovery operation. You probably don't remember me specifically, but you personally commended our team for working through the night in dangerous conditions." The guards watched in stunned silence as the sergeant continued. "Ma'am, this woman is definitely Colonel Sarah Mitchell. She's one of the most respected officers I've ever served under. If she says she's here to take command, then that's exactly what's happening." The revelation hit the guards like a thunderbolt. The woman they had been denying entry to for the past 30 minutes was indeed their new commanding officer, and they had just subjected her to an embarrassing and frustrating ordeal on her first day. The male guard's face went pale as the full implications of their mistake became clear. Ma'am, Colonel Mitchell, we had no way of knowing." Sarah held up her hand to stop his stammering apology. Despite her frustration, she recognized that this situation was more about failed communication than incompetent guards. The protocols they had followed were actually correct given the information they had available. "Sergeant Martinez," Sarah said, "I appreciate your timely intervention. Can you escort me to the command building while these guards contact their supervisors to report what happened here?" "Absolutely, ma'am," Martinez replied enthusiastically. "It would be an honor." As Sarah gathered her belongings from her car, word of the incident began to spread among the military personnel who had been waiting in line. Whispered conversations rippled through the crowd as soldiers realized they had just witnessed their new commander being denied entry to her own base. The female guard approached Sarah one more time, her military bearing impeccable despite her obvious mortification. "Colonel Mitchell, ma'am, I want to formally apologize for this incident. We were following protocol, but that doesn't excuse the inconvenience and embarrassment we've caused you." Sarah studied the young guard's face, seeing genuine remorse and professional integrity. These were exactly the qualities she wanted in her security personnel, even if their strict adherence to protocol had complicated her morning. "What's your name, soldier?" Sarah asked. "Private First Class Jennifer Hayes, ma'am." "Private Hayes, you and your partner followed your training and protected base security. While the situation was frustrating, you did your job correctly based on the information available to you." "That's exactly what I expect from my personnel." Relief washed over both guards' faces, though they maintained their professional composure. Sarah realized that this unexpected incident might actually serve as an important early lesson for everyone involved about the importance of clear communication and proper preparation. As Sergeant Martinez prepared to escort her to the command building, Sarah took one last look at the gate where she had spent the most challenging first 30 minutes of her new assignment. She couldn't help but smile slightly, realizing that this story would probably become legendary among the base personnel within hours. The command building bustled with activity as Colonel Sarah Mitchell finally entered her new domain. Word of the gate incident had traveled faster than she had anticipated, and she could feel eyes following her as Sergeant Martinez led her through the corridors. Whispered conversations stopped abruptly when personnel spotted her, and she noticed several soldiers straightening their postures and offering respectful nods. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Sarah. In 30 minutes at the front gate, she had inadvertently learned more about the base's security protocols, communication systems, and personnel attitudes than she might have discovered in weeks of formal briefings. The incident had provided her with valuable insights into both the strengths and weaknesses of her new command. Sergeant Martinez stopped outside a door marked with a brass nameplate that still read, "Colonel Reynolds." He knocked twice before opening it to reveal a spacious office with large windows overlooking the training grounds. The room was spartanly decorated but functional, with military maps covering one wall and filing cabinets lined up along another. "Ma'am, this is your office," Martinez said, his pride in the base evident in his voice. Colonel Reynolds kept everything organized and up to date. Most of his personal items have been removed, but all the operational files and reports are current through yesterday. Sarah entered the office and set her briefcase on the large wooden desk. The view from the windows showed soldiers engaged in morning exercises, their movements precise and coordinated. She could see the pride and professionalism that clearly characterized this unit, making the communication breakdown that had delayed her entry even more puzzling. "Sergeant Martinez," Sarah said, turning to face him, "I want you to understand that what happened at the gate this morning was not primarily the fault of those guards. Someone in the chain of command failed to ensure that my arrival was properly communicated to all relevant personnel. I intend to find out where that breakdown occurred and make sure it doesn't happen again." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Ma'am, that's exactly what I would have expected you to say. You always were fair about identifying the real source of problems, rather than just blaming whoever was most visible." Within the hour, Sarah's office began filling with staff members who had heard about the morning's events. Her executive assistant, Master Sergeant Patricia Wong, arrived with a stack of files and an expression of profound embarrassment. "Colonel Mitchell, ma'am," Wong began, "I owe you a sincere apology. The notification of your arrival was sent to my office 3 days ago, but it somehow got buried under a pile of routine correspondence. I only discovered it this morning when Captain Stevens called, asking about the situation at the gate." Sarah accepted the files and gestured for Wong to sit down. The Master Sergeant was clearly competent and experienced, and her distress over the error seemed genuine rather than defensive. "Master Sergeant Wong, mistakes happen, especially during transition periods. What matters now is how we prevent similar incidents in the future. I want you to develop a systematic protocol for processing and distributing critical information. Every important communication should be logged, verified, and confirmed with multiple departments." Throughout the morning, various personnel stopped by to introduce themselves and offer their own apologies for the gate incident. Sarah used each interaction as an opportunity to assess her new team while reinforcing the lessons learned from the morning's confusion. At noon, she called a meeting with all department heads to address the incident directly and establish her leadership approach. The conference room filled quickly with officers representing every major function of the base. Sarah noticed that several of them still seemed nervous about how she would react to the morning's embarrassment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, standing at the head of the conference table, "I'm sure you've all heard about this morning's adventure at the front gate. Rather than dwelling on apologies or assigning blame, I want to use this incident as a learning opportunity for all of us. I did ban." She moved to a whiteboard and began outlining the chain of events. "The breakdown occurred at multiple points: inadequate communication protocols, technical difficulties with phone systems, and insufficient backup procedures when normal channels failed. However, I want to commend the security guards who, despite the inconvenience they caused me, followed their training and maintained base security." Captain Stevens, the base security chief, raised his hand. "Ma'am, should we discipline the guards for the incident?" Sarah shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. Private Hayes and her partner did exactly what they were trained to do. They encountered someone claiming to be their new commander, but lacking proper verification through established channels. Their response was correct, given the information available to them. If anything, their actions demonstrated that our security protocols are effective when properly followed." The room buzzed with quiet conversations as the officers absorbed this perspective. Many had expected their new commander to be angry about the embarrassing incident, but Sarah's analytical approach and fair assessment were already establishing her leadership style. "What I want from each of you," Sarah continued, "is a review of communication protocols within your departments. I want to know how critical information flows through your chains of command, and what backup systems exist when primary methods fail. We'll reconvene next week to discuss improvements." After the meeting, Sarah spent the afternoon touring the base with various department heads, observing training exercises, and meeting soldiers at every level. Everywhere she went, personnel mentioned the morning's incident, often with good humor about their new commander's unconventional first day. Private Hayes and her partner were among the last people Sarah encountered during her tour. She found them still at their gate station, maintaining their professional vigilance despite the morning's stress. When they saw her approaching, both guards snapped to attention with parade ground precision. "Private Hayes," Sarah said, "I wanted to speak with you both before ending my first day here." "Yes, ma'am," Hayes replied, her voice steady despite obvious nervousness. You and your partner demonstrated exactly the kind of dedication to security that I expect from all personnel under my command. Your adherence to protocol, even under pressure, shows that you understand the importance of base security. I want you to know that you have my complete confidence and support." The relief on both guards' faces was immediate and profound. Hayes straightened even further and responded with heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am. We were worried that we had damaged your first day here." "On the contrary," Sarah smiled. "You helped make it memorable in all the right ways. You showed me that this base has personnel who won't compromise security, regardless of external pressure. That's invaluable." As evening approached, Sarah returned to her office to review the day's experiences. The incident that had begun as a frustrating delay had evolved into a comprehensive introduction to her new command's strengths, weaknesses, and personnel. She opened her computer and began typing her first official report as base commander, starting with a detailed analysis of the morning's communication breakdown and ending with commendations for the security guards who had unknowingly tested their new commander before allowing her to assume her duties. The story of "Madam, you can't enter" would indeed become legendary on the base, but not as a tale of embarrassing miscommunication. Instead, it became an example of how effective leadership could transform a potentially negative incident into a positive lesson about security, communication, and the importance of supporting personnel who do their jobs correctly, even under difficult circumstances. Years later, when Private Hayes had been promoted to sergeant and was training new security personnel, she would tell the story of the day she denied entry to her future commander, emphasizing that good soldiers always follow protocol and that great leaders understand the difference between mistakes and proper procedure.